Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, beloved. I want to welcome you once more again to this beautiful Shabbat day. We are continuing with our study of the prophecy of our time, which is Daniel chapter 11, verse 40 to Daniel chapter 12, verse 18. We've already started on a build-up to that prophecy. And today we are still continuing on that build-up, marathon run. And I'm sure that the next time we meet, I will be going in earnestly into the prophecy itself, starting from Daniel chapter 40, right up to the end of Daniel chapter 12, verse 13. But I know we are not going to cover that in one sitting. There's going to be a lot of presentations that are linked up to that timeline. Today we are starting on Daniel chapter 11. Beloved, this is the prophecy that we are dealing with. This is the prophecy of our time. And we want to go into scriptures and see if this is it. And if we see history fulfilling Daniel chapter 11 and 12, then we must be ready for the kingdom of Ashatan is fast coming to an end, and our Father's kingdom is imminently coming. So beloved, I want us to be prepared. I want us to be all to be ready. You know, prophecy is a gift that Yahweh has given us so that we may be in the same frequency as our Father, so that we may be aligned with Him. You know, Yah does not want to do anything without revealing it to His servants. And so He will reveal every step of the way to His servants, and He has already revealed it to them. And what is left for us is just to go into those prophecies and dig out of them and put the picture before us, and then we can see exactly what has happened, what is happening, and what is still yet to happen. And when we've come to that place, then we can clearly tell where we are in the stream of time. Today we're going to start with Daniel chapter 11. I want to say that at the time Daniel wrote this vision, Babylon had already passed off the scene. Babylon was no longer there. As you can see on our chart there, you will clearly see that we said last week that the first vision was seen by, or the dream was seen by King Nebuchadnezzar, right? And Daniel interpreted that vision as him being the head of gold. Then the next, which was silver, was Medo-Persia. Then the third, which was Greece, was brass or bronze. Then the fourth, which was iron, was Rome, right? And obviously the fifth, Rome gets to be divided, right? The fifth were a mixture of iron and clay, and that was Europe, right? Which was divided into 10 smaller kingdoms, right? Then himself, Daniel, his first vision that he saw in Daniel chapter 7 was that of Babylon being represented as a lion, and Medo-Persia as a bear, and Greece as a leopard, right? Then Rome, the nondescript beast, you could not describe it, obviously. You couldn't describe it. And then we've got Europe, and Daniel chapter 7 also goes on to Papal Rome, right? Which was there in 538 AD, and was wounded 1798 AD. In chapter 8, Daniel has got a second vision, right? In chapter 8, it's Babylon is no longer there. There is Medo-Persia, right? Then there is which is represented by a ram god. Then there is Greece, a god. Then there is Rome, right? Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then in chapter 11, right? Chapter 11, that's when you have Medo-Persia, right? This is chapter 11. We have Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and Papal Rome at the end of the time. So according to scripture, Papal Rome will be the last world power, right? undergirded by the United States of America as the second beast that gives armies to Rome, the second beast that gives authority to Rome, the second beast that enforces what Rome wants is the United States of America. And these two, they form one beast, the end time beast. These two beasts, they form the one end time sort of power that will bring about suffering, persecution, and the death of those that believe. But Scripture also has told us that it is this is the last one. And we are seeing Rome and the United States of America coming together to form the union of church and state. We are seeing this every day. And you need to be blind not to see this. And recently we've been hearing that the President of the United States of America has invited the Pope to a joint meeting of the Senate and their parliament, and then you see that that is empowering. That is empowering the Pope. He is recognized as a world leader. He is being recognized as the chief authority because it is her biddings that the United States government is actually enforcing. So that's where we are. That's where we are. So in Daniel chapter 11, we see that Daniel is writing this vision, but Babylon is no more there. Chapter 11 begins with Medo-Persia, right? It begins with Medo-Persia and continues with the reign of the third kingdom, that is Greece, right? And then Rome. And then, of course, Papa Rome right at the end. We've observed that in each succeeding prophetic outline, more details are given, right? From here to there, we have more details being given. Papa Rome comes into picture, right? And from there to this one, we've got more detail. Papa Rome has got a wound, right? And to here, we've got more detail. The end time, Papa Rome, supremacy number 2, comes into effect. Daniel chapter 11 has got the details of how second supremacy of Papa Rome is going to influence events on the earth. All that we are going to be looking at, right? So we've observed that each succeeding prophetic outline has got more details, or more details are given, which focus more clearly on the end time events, right? As I've just mentioned, here we've got the wounding of papal supremacy, right? Here papal supremacy comes in and here is wounded. Here papal supremacy number 2 comes in to cause persecution, suffering, and killing of those that are going to be believing what Yahuwah, obeying what Yahuwah says. These are the events that we are looking forward to. We noticed in the previous presentation that in chapters 2, 7, 8, it is dealing with the rise and fall of great empires, starting with Babylon. But then when we come to chapter 11, which is what we are going to go into today, we are going to be seeing the succession of kings as they sat on the throne of those empires. So chapter 11 is dealing with the kings, whereas chapters 2, 7, 8 was dealing with the empires. Chapter 11 is going to be dealing with the kings. By the way, you can't separate the empire and the king, but there are certain aspects, characteristics that we observe as these kingdoms are succeeding one after the other. So Daniel chapter 11 to Daniel chapter 12 verse 4 is called the fourth vision, and it's the fourth prophetic outline. And we can see that it is in alignment with the first 3. Yes. Like we see here, the fourth vision is still Medo-Persia, it's still Greece, it's still Rome, it's still Papa Rome, right? That is the fourth vision that Daniel sees right at the end. But of course, there is more detail in Daniel chapter 11. We've got the atheistic communism coming in, right? That's more detail added to this prophecy. And we've got Papa Rome number 2, Papa Rome supremacy number 2 is also added up to this prophecy. And then the end comes after those succeeding kings have come onto the scene and left, and the last to be on the scene is Papa Rome supremacy number 2, and that king of that kingdom is going to be destroyed with the fire, with the brightness of Yahushua's second coming. And we can see that all these prophetic timelines, they are all in alignment, and the fourth, Daniel chapter 11, is also in alignment with the first 4. Chapter 11 begins with Medo-Persia because at the time of the giving of the vision, Babylon had already fallen. Whereas the first 3 outlines cover the rise and fall of empires, chapter 11 reiterates the rise and fall of kings who sat on the thrones of those empires. What we must notice is that all 4 visions come, or rather they will cover same major prophetic outline, and that these prophetic outlines are given in a lived historical sequence and continuity. Right. This is the main vision, right? From Babylon to the Stone Kingdom. And all these prophecies, they will fit into that vision. Because we've got the same sequence of powers coming into being, right? And all of them, they're filling up. There is a gap here. From Europe to the Stone Kingdoms, there is a gap. And that gap is filled by the details that follow one prophetic outline after the other. Are we clear? What we must notice is that all 4 visions cover the same major prophetic outline, and that these prophetic outlines are given in a lived historical sequence and continuity. Each additional outline adds more detail and with great specificity focuses on end-time events. The major part of this prophecy has been fulfilled. Just the small part that pertains to us living at this time, right at the edges of the end, is still yet to be fulfilled. So what we are saying is, when you look at this prophecy, right, to the Stone Kingdom, the major parts of that prophecy have been fulfilled, right? Right now, what we are waiting for, all this has been fulfilled. The atheistic communist kingdom, which was from 1918 to 1989, has already been fulfilled, right? Right? This is what was broken down by Pope John Paul and Ronald Reagan. That communistic, atheistic era or empire has come to an end. And right now, what we are looking at is Papa Rome supremacy number 2. So Papa Rome supremacy number 2 is the one that is in the formation as we speak right now. That's the one that is being prepared for. And I must say, the preparations for Papa Rome supremacy number 2 are very, very advanced. Papa Rome supremacy number 2. This is very, very advanced. So what we want to do, beloved, is we want to look at the events leading up to Papa Rome supremacy number 2. Because that's the prophecy of our time. When we understand the events that are leading up to the supremacy number 2, then we can be able, then when we get into that supremacy number 2, we are able to understand it. So, in the same way that each empire followed the one before it, so that the sequence is intact, so also in Daniel chapter 11, the kings follow in sequence and with continuity. That's what we are going to notice when we delve into Daniel chapter 2. I'm just giving you a heads up here. Right? The continuity that we observe here, one after the other, is the same continuity that we will observe in Daniel chapter 11, one king after the other. It is this very continuity, this historically verified continuity, which gives credibility to the entire application of the prophetic outlines to historical events. So this continuity is backed up with history, right? Those who go into history, they will see that these kingdoms have been there in that sequence and in that continuity in those years. This is prophecy in being fulfilled. As you also will see in Daniel chapter 7, the kingdoms also come in the same sequence, right? And they continue. I want you to catch the word continue. They continue right up to the end of the time. Please catch the word continue. Because there is a continuity with these kingdoms, which is very consistent. The continuity of the kingdoms is consistent with the historical fulfillment of the coming of these kingdoms. And so therefore, prophecy becomes so truthful and so real to those that follow prophecy. You can't be a believer in Yahuwah when you do not know this prophecy. And the prophecy that you know is the prophecy of those men who come to you. I've seen this and this in your family. And they claim to be prophets on televisions when they do not understand the prophecies that really matter, which is the prophecies that pertain to our salvation. They are interested in prophecies of acquiring material things, in prophecies of getting married, in prophecies of seeing where you stay, in prophecies of being able to state your cell phone number. That's not prophecy, That's not prophecy. This is prophecy, because this determines your eternal destiny. This is what Yahuwah has given us so that we are able to be in alignment with Him as we move to the end. A point to note is that the prophetic outline of Daniel chapter 11 extends into Daniel chapter 12 verses 1 to 4, right? So the end of everything comes to Daniel chapter 12 verse 4. From Daniel chapter 5 to Daniel chapter 13, it's an epilogue, right? Which is kind of a narrative after the whole drama is completed, right? Someone comes onto the stage and it fills up, right? Fills up the act that has been done in the drama to give more detail to the act that has been done in the drama. So verses 5 to verse 18 is an epilogue. But the actual prophecy of our time is ending in Daniel chapter 12 verse 4. Now, let's delve into Daniel chapter 11. When Daniel chapter 11 verse 1 starts, Babylon, as I've mentioned, is already fallen. And the Middle Persia begins with the Medes and the Persians. Daniel chapter 11 verse 1 says, and in the first year of Dariawashe, that's his name, it's not Darius. His name is called Dariawashe, the Mede. I myself stood up to support and protect him. So the scriptures give us the time frame. It is given as the first year of the rule of Dariawashe. Dariawashe is of Persian origin, but in the Hebrew, it means it's a title rather than a name. It's a title for several Persian kings, right? Like I would give an example in my Bantu language. When you say Dari Rawashe, you are saying this is the throne of the king, right? This is the king's throne. So in like manner also, Dariawashe was a title of several Persian kings, right? So everyone who would come to the throne would be Dariawashe, Dariawashe, number one, Dariawashe, number two. Now the Greeks, because they are so much into the US, Sus, Zas, Zeus, Jesus, all these, Tarsus, Dionysius, so they changed the names, these Persian names, right? They changed them to suit their own language and their own deities that they call in their own language. But the Persian king's name in the Hebrew would be Dariawashe, which would mean that it's a title for the Persian kings. Persian battles. Now in Daniel chapter 2, we see Persia battling with Greece. Verse 2 says, says, Daniel chapter 11 verse 2 says, and now I declare the truth to you. See, 3 more sovereigns are to arise in Persia, and the 4th is to become far richer than them all. And by his power, through his riches, he stirs up all against the rulership of Greece. So here we are in Persia. Maybe let me just redraw this one so that it can become clear. I want to put this on top so that we can all see. I'm not sure whether these diagrams are helping. I will have to find out from you guys who are studying with me to see if these diagrams are of any help, because I might be wasting my time drawing all this and you are not seeing it. Rather, I would want to actually improve so that whatever I'm trying to relay is understood and it will make sense. Right, so this timeline, let's put it this way. So we have this timeline, right? Okay, I'll maybe somewhere here. Right. So we have Medo-Persia, we have Greece, we have pagan Rome, we have Papa Rome, we have the communist, then we have Papa Rome supremacy. I think I need to make it work to cover all of them. Looks like they will not fit here. We make them a bit smaller. So I'll make them smaller. We've got Medo-Persia. We've got Greece, we've got Rome, pagan Rome, we've got Papa Rome, right, Papa Rome Supremacy 1, Papa Rome Supremacy 2, right, then we've got communist, then we've got Papa Rome Supremacy 2, then the end. So there is Medo-Persia, right? Medo-Persia. There we've got Greece. There we've got pagan Rome, right? Then we have Papa Rome, right? Papa Rome. Then we have, am I correct? Greece, pagan Rome, Papa Rome, then we've got the atheist communism, all right. Atheist communism, which was to be dismantled by Pope John Paul and Ronald Reagan. Then we've got Papa Rome, supremacy number 2, number 1, right, number 1, number 2. I hope it makes sense, right? So that's where we are, right? That's where we are currently sitting. This is the last timeline of Daniel chapter 11. This is Daniel chapter 11. Right. This is Daniel chapter 11. Right. And so, Persia, we were at Persia battling with Greece. Verse 2, Daniel chapter 11, verse 2 says, and now I declare the truth to you. See, 3 more sovereigns are to arise in Persia, and the 4th is to become far richer than them all. And by his power, through his riches, he stirs up all against the rulership of Greece. So there is the 4th power in Medo-Persia stirs up, right, he stays up all against the rulership of Greece. Now, the setting is very clear. The setting of this prophecy is in Persia, and also there are events taking place in the realm of Greece. So it is the time, right? We've been given the time, right? The time is in the first year of King Darius the Mede, right? And the setting is in Middle Persia and in the Grecia realm, right? When we saw, we saw in Daniel chapter 2, Middle Persia was illustrated by the arms and the breast of silver. That was the symbolism of Middle Persia in Daniel chapter 2. This is what Daniel chapter 2 said. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and the thighs of bronze. Daniel chapter 2 verse 36 goes on to say, this is the dream and its interpretation we declare before the sovereign. Remember, the king had a dream, and he could not remember the dream, and he wanted his wise men to tell him the dream and then interpret the dream, but no one could do that except Daniel. When he had prayed with his friends, with his brothers, when he had gone to pray, Yahweh then brought the interpretation, brought the dream to him and its interpretation as well. And so he's coming to King Nebuchadnezzar to interpret the dream that the king had. You, O sovereign, are a sovereign of sovereigns, for the allower of the heavens has given you a reign, power, and strength, and preciousness. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, he has given them unto you, unto your hand, and he has made you ruler over them. You are the head of gold. So Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. And after you rises up another reign, lower than yours, and another third reign of bronze. And after you rises up another reign, lower than yours, and the third reign that is represented by the silver, and the third reign of bronze that rules over the earth. So in Daniel chapter 7, the same power was illustrated by the bear. So Daniel chapter 7 verse 5 says, and see another beast, a second like a bear. So the second beast, right, that comes into the picture is the bear. And the second kingdom was represented by silver, right, which was Middle Persia. And the one that is represented by the bear is Middle Persia. And it was raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth, between its mouth. And they said this to it, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked and saw another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and rule was given to it. After this I looked in the night visions, and I saw a 4th beast, fearsome and burning, exceedingly strong. That's the nondescript beast. That is Papa Rome, right? Which comes after Greece. It had no description, but he said, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and it trampled down the rest with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. So that's the added detail that you find in Daniel chapter 7. Now we read in Daniel chapter 11 verse 2. And now I declare the truth to you. See, 3 more sovereigns are to arise in Persia. And the 4th is to become far richer than them all, and by his power, through his riches, he stirs up all against the rulership of Greece. In Daniel chapter 8, this same conflict is spoken of. Daniel chapter 8, verse 8, it says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, the sovereign, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me in the first. That was in Daniel chapter 7. And I looked in the vision, and it came to be, while I was looking, that I was in the citadel of Shushan, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I saw by the river Ulai, and I lifted my eyes and looked up, and I saw a ram standing beside the river, and it had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high. and the one was higher than the other. So you see, it is raised up on one side, right? That was the inequality in the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. One was more powerful than the other. That arrangement consistently becomes out clear in the outlines that comes one after the other. And so it may be represented by shoulders, one shoulder up, one shoulder down. And then this time it is represented by horns. One horn is bigger than the other. And so it says, and the one was higher than the other. And the higher one came up last. So verse 4 says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast could stand before him, and there was no one to deliver from his hand. While he did as he pleased, and it became great. And I was observing, and I saw a male goat came from the west over the surface of all the earth, without touching the ground. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. That's now Alexander the Great. And he came to the ram, Medo-Persia, that had two horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him in the rage of his power. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he became embittered against him, and smote the ram, and broke his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to withstand him. But he threw him down to the ground, and trampled on him, and there was no one to deliver the ram from his hand. So that's Greece here. That's Greece overcoming Medo-Persia. Here is the power that is coming on the scene. It's now Greece. Medo-Persia has been what? Has been removed from the scene. So the power that is ruling now is Greece. That's Greece now. Medo-Persia is no longer there. So like I said in Daniel chapter 8, verse 8, the power of Greece is broken. The power of Greece, so in verse 8, Daniel 8, verse 8, the power of Greece is also broken and divided into four. Let's read that after it has destroyed Medo-Persia, we read here in verse 8, and the male goat became very great, right? But when he was strong, the large horn was broken, and in the place of it, four conspicuous ones came up towards the four winds of the heavens. So when Alexander the Great died, his realm, his kingdom was divided into four, and it was given to his four generals. So obviously one would see that once the power that was there, which was sustaining and holding the kingdom together, is no longer there, and then further divided into four, it becomes kind of a challenge. We must establish the breaking up of Grecia, or the death of Alexander, resulted in the kingdom being divided amongst these four generals, which resulted in creating a vacuum. There was no outright world emperor at that time. So when Grecia fell, it was many years before the fourth kingdom came on the scene. The contest was who was going to become the next world power, the fourth kingdom. So Greece has been divided, right? So let's do this. Let me do it this way. So we have Greece here. Greece is divided, right? Greece is divided. As a result, there is a vacuum, right? There is a vacuum. There is no real world power in that moment when Greece was divided into four entities. There was no outright world emperor. So when Grecia fell, it was many years before the fourth kingdom came on the scene. The contest was who was going to become the next world power, the fourth kingdom. So in that context, we find two players coming on the scene, contesting one against the other, right, in order to become the world power. These two powers are Mizraim, or what some call Egypt, right, and Syria. So Mizraim desired to become the fourth kingdom, but Syria was also determined to get that prize. These two battled each other. This is the subject of Daniel chapter 11, verses 5 to 14. Let us look at the contestation for power in these prophetic outlines. And we see a mighty sovereign coming up, right? We've already seen that one of Greece, right? Now we go on to verse 3, right? Okay, I know verse 3 we've already covered it, because that is where Greece covers a mighty sovereign shall arise and shall rule with great authority and do as he pleases. That was Alexander the Great. Then verse 4 deals with the fall of Greece. But when he has arisen, his rule shall be broken up and divided towards the four winds of the heavens, but not among his descendants, nor according to his authority with which he ruled, because his rule shall be uprooted even for others besides him. So the four rulers that came after Alexander the Great were not as authoritative as he was. They were not as powerful as he was, and they were not as effective as he was. So that's why there was no an outright ruler. So that's when I said a vacuum was created, and Mizraim comes up. It aspires to become an empire, and we have seen Syria also comes up. It aspires to become an empire. Then we pick it up from Daniel chapter 11, verse 5. Let's go together. It reads, "And a sovereign of the south shall become strong, along with one of his princes, who gains power over him and shall rule, his rule being a great rule." Right. Now, before we go further, I want to say, beloved, Daniel chapter 11, why it is not properly understood is because people are failing to put all the aspects of that prophecy into their own context, and they are failing to identify historical events that fulfill that prophecy. But once there are some basics, once we are able to understand the basics, put the basics in their right place, then this prophecy becomes as clear as daylight. Right? Now, this prophecy, or rather, generally, like all other prophecies in the scriptures, as we mentioned last time, is they revolve around Yashra'al. Once we can understand that, then we can know who is the king of the south, who is the king of the north, right? So the southern location is in the context of the position vis-a-vis of Yashra'al. It is in relationship to Yashra'al. So wherever Yashra'al is, what is the southern power? What is the southern power from Yashra'al? In other words, to the south of Yashra'al, what is the power there? Obviously, scripture, we read scriptures last time, which showed to us that the southern part of Yashra'al was Mizraim, or so-called Egypt. Now, as we established in the previous presentation, the power to the south of Yashra'al was Mizraim, or Egypt. During the days of Medo-Persia, Gracia, and pagan Rome, Yahweh's people lived in the Kodesh land of promise, right? Yeah, they were there in their land that Yah had put them. All the prophecies that you find in the scriptures, therefore, were revolving around the position of Yashra'al. And then they were in the, and then when this prophecy was being given, they were in the geographical, and were the geographical center of prophetic utterances themselves. So they were in the geographical location, and they, Yashra'al themselves, were the geographical center of all prophetic utterances. Yes, Prophets can talk of other nations, but it is only as they affect Yashara'ah or as they are affected by Yashara'ah. So you can't have prophecy independent of Yahweh's people. It's not possible. Because prophecy is given for Yahweh's people, for their sake, right? Prophecy is a gift for the children of Yah. So Yahweh would not give a prophecy unnecessarily to the pagans because it is of no benefit to them. Yahweh would not give prophecy to unbelievers because it is of no benefit to them. But as and only the believer comes to Yahweh, then they will see the benefit of prophecy. So as we have noticed, to the south of Yashara'ah was Mizraim or Egypt, and to the north was Syria. We read texts, rather last time we read texts that revealed that Yashara'ah was sandwiched between these two nations. Therefore, the king of the south refers to Mizraim, and the king of the north refers to the king of Syria. Prophecy is given us to know where we are in the stream of time. So this prophetic outline given in Daniel chapter 11 verses 5 to 13 enabled our ancestors to see where they were in the stream of time as long as they were in the land that Yahweh had given them. Now, this prophetic outline was fulfilled whilst they were in the land. So when they saw the events unrolling, then they were encouraged with the prophecies of Daniel. Because in their lifetime, they saw these kingdoms. They saw these kings, the king of the south and the king of the north. They saw them marching across their land, attacking one another. The king of the south, Mizraim's armies, would pass through Yashara'ah to attack Syria. And our forefathers could trace the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 11. And in the same way, as Syria marched back down to Mizraim to counterattack, Yah's people could watch that fulfillment also. So this movement of up and down of these two nations attacking each other, our ancestors would see these armies march across their lands. They were not so powerful. They couldn't stop any one of them, right? So you'd find at times there was a crisis of allegiance. They wouldn't know who to support. If they supported Syria, Egypt would bow them. If they supported Egypt, then Syria would bow them. And so they were in a crisis as far as these two big powers were concerned. So I don't think it's necessary that we should read. I wanted to read the confrontation between the south king and the king of the north. We read that last week. It's quite a long read. And I will just give you the verses that you can read by yourself. 2 Kings chapter 18, verses 17 to verse 21. You can see another confrontation there. Then 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 29, verse 34. 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 7. And then as a result of being sandwiched between these two warring powers, Yashara'ah always found herself in a crisis of allegiance. You will see that in 2 Kings 17, verse 4 and 5, C and 6. Now, it is on this background that the prophecies of Daniel chapter 11 are built. So that's the platform upon which the prophecies of Daniel chapter 11 are built. They start off with the king of the south with Mizraim and the king of the north with Syria, right? Confronting each other, wrestling, right? Fighting to rise to the supremacy of becoming the world power of that day. And our ancestors were in between these powers that are fighting, right? There is a saying that when two elephants fight, then it is the grass that suffers. So we were like the grass, and these are like the elephants that were fighting. Mizraim, king of the south, struggled against Syria, king of the north, to become the fourth empire. But they form but later on, when they see that the fight is not going to get them anywhere, they try to form an alliance, aspiring to be one, and then become number 4 power. That we read from Daniel chapter 11, verse 6. Let's continue. And at the end of years, they shall join themselves together, and a daughter of the sovereign of the south shall come to the sovereign of the north to make an alliance. But she shall not retain the strength of her power, nor would he or his power stand. And she shall be given up, and those who brought her, and he who brought her forth, and he who supported her in the house. So that intermarriage failed. It couldn't work. It couldn't hold them together. The king of the south gives his daughter to the king of the north. But that marriage did not last. So she had to come back. And so therefore they were back onto the conflict and the fighting again. So when intermarriage could not sustain their sought after bond, Mizraim and Syria, they go at war again. And we read that in verse 7. But from a branch of her roots, one shall arise in his place, and he shall come into the defense, and come into a stronghold of the sovereign of the north, and shall act against them, and shall prevail. Verse 8 says, and also their mighty ones, with their princes, and their precious utensils of silver and gold, he shall seize and bring to Mizraim, and he shall stand more years than the sovereign of the north. So we can see Mizraim has gone back to war with Syria and has gained ground, has won, and it comes back with the spoils, right? And for many years, Mizraim, Egypt, has got power over Syria, the kingdom of the north. Then in verse 9, we read this, then he shall enter the reign of the sovereign of the south, but shall return to his own land. So there is a continued struggle between Mizraim and Syria. So the king of the south goes down the king of the north goes down to the sovereign of the south, and then he returns, right? But his sons shall stay themselves up and assemble a great army. They go back to assemble another greater army. And he shall certainly come and overflow and pass through, then return to his stronghold and be stirred up. Then the sovereign of the south shall be enraged, right? When these come and they cause problems and they do all that, the king of the south, the sovereign of the south, shall be enraged and they go out to fight with him, with the sovereign of the north, who shall raise a large army, but the army shall be given into the hand of his enemy. So again, Mizraim wins, right? There is this continued wrangling, fighting between these two, the king of the north and the king of the south. And he shall capture the army, his heart being exalted, and he shall cause tens of thousands to fall, but not prevail. So even if he killed many Syrians, but he has not won the war, he has just won the battle, but not the war. And the sovereign of the north shall return and raise an army greater than the former, and certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much supplies. So after some years, the king of the south reorg, right? Builds a bigger army, comes back to Egypt or to Mizraim and come to fight. In 200 BC, as they were doing this up and down battles, in 200 BC, there is a power that emerges. Listen to this, verse 14. And in those times, many shall rise up against the sovereign of the south, right? So when they were doing this, the sovereign of the south was under attack from many, while some violent ones among your people exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall stumble. Then the sovereign of the north shall come in and build a siege mound and capture a city of strongholds, and the arms of the south shall not stand, nor his choice people, for there is no strength to stand. Finally, so this power that is alluded to in verses 14 and 15 is now pagan Rome, right? And when you look at pagan Rome and Syria, right, the other one is more to the north of the other, right? Right? So pagan Rome becomes the northern kingdom, right? And it is to the north as well, more or less to the northwest of Yahweh's people. Then the sovereign of the north shall come in and build a siege. Right. Now, finally, the king of the south could not stand, and he was overcome and was triumphed against. Then verse 16 says, so his opponent shall do as he pleases, and with no one standing against him, and stand in the splendid land with the destruction in his hand. So this king who overcame the Syria is the pagan Rome king who goes on a rampage, destroying other kingdoms. And in verse 16, we see that he has gone into Palestine and he has overcome it with the violence and with the destruction. So Rome conquers Palestine in verse 16. In verse 17, and he shall set his face to end with the strength of his army, of his entire rule, and make an alliance with him. And he shall do so, and give him the daughter of women to corrupt her, but she shall not stand, neither be for him. So again, Rome, Mizraim tries to enter into an alliance with Rome, but this one will not stand. It will not help. Right. So Mizraim is eventually overcome by Rome, and I'm sure that was the end of Mizraim as a nation, and that's when they must have started coming in to the land. Right. The Roman influence started to prevail in the land of Mizraim. Now, we go on to verse 18. The empire, the establishment of empire number 4, right, is what is being discussed in verse 18. Then he shall turn his face to the coastlands and capture many, but a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end, and with the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him. So we are beginning to see the establishment of pagan Rome as an empire. Right? Rome had been conquering to conquer, right, nations around it. In 200 BC, Rome emerges as the conqueror of Syria, and then it conquers also Palestine, it conquers also Mizraim. And then it comes now, the time has come for that empire to be established under Julius Caesar in verse 18. That is when he shall turn his face to the coastlands and capture many. He captures many nations. But a ruler shall bring the reproach against them, right, to an end. And with the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him. So then he shall turn his face towards the strongholds of his own land, but shall stumble and fall and not to be found. So after Julius Caesar has established his empire, he goes back to Rome. And when he went there back to Rome, that's when he was killed. So scripture says he shall stumble and fall and not be found. In other words, he's dead. He died, right? And the King Julius Caesar, or Emperor Julius Caesar, was no more. Then after him, verse 20 says, and in his place one shall stand up who imposes taxes on the adorned city of the rule. But within a few days he is destroyed, but not in wrath or in battle. So in verse 20, the one who comes after Augustus Caesar, right? The one who comes after Julius Caesar is Augustus Caesar, right? He comes to power and he raises taxes during the time of the birth of Yahusha, right? We read that in Luke Let's read what KJV says. I've been reading from the Besora, right? But the KJV says, Daniel chapter 11 verse 19. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom. But within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So Augustus Caesar is the one that raised taxes. That's the one that we read about in Luke chapter 2. We can read from Luke chapter 2 verses 1, and it says, and it came to be in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus for all the world to be registered. This took place as a first registration while Quirinius was governing Syria. So Syria was now a province of Rome. Right? Quirinius, we suppose, I don't know whether this is a Grecian name or it's a Roman name, was the one who was governing Syria on behalf of the Roman emperor. So it is quite clear by this time pagan Rome had taken over Syria and was also ruling over Palestine, or ruling over the land, the glorious land. And all were going to be registered, each one to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, to Yehuda, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of the lineage of David, to be registered with Miriam, who was engaged to him, being pregnant. And it came to be that while they were there, the days were filled for her to give birth. Then comes Tiberius Caesar, a vile person, comes to power. Daniel chapter 11 verse 12 says, and in his place, in the place of the king who raised the taxes, who was Augustus Caesar, right? Comes up Tiberius Caesar, a vile person, comes to power, and in his place shall arise a despised one, to whom they shall not give the excellence of the rule, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the rule by flatteries. Verse 22, Daniel chapter 11, verse 20 says, and the arms of the flood shall be swept away from before him and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. So the arms of the flood, that is war upheavals, right, taking place in the kingdom, right? And at that time when that was taking place, Yahusha also would die, or during the rule of this power, Yahusha would be impaled on the stake. I am persuaded this was the beginning of the times of the Gentiles. For the Besora started to go out to the Gentiles. And with that also came deception and apostasy. When the Gentiles accepted the truth, they mixed the truth with their pagan practices, pagan deities, and the worship was mingled with all these things, thus making the worship become syncretic. And after they joined him, he shall work deceit, verse 23, he shall work deceit, and they shall come up and become strong with a small nation. They came, and he shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers, distribute among them plunder and spoil and supplies, and devise his plots against the strongholds, but only for a time. So during this time, right, when the apostasy is creeping in after the death of Yahusha, there came persecution of the early assembly, which was composed of the Gentiles and the remnant of Yahshua. And they were subjected to this persecution. Like the scripture is saying, he shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. Distribute among them plunder and the spoil and the supplies, and the devise his plots against the strongholds, but only for a time. So there was a decreed time that he would do this. So you have in verse 25, and he shall stir up his power and his heart against the sovereign of the south with a great army, and the sovereign of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but not stand, for they shall devise plots against him. So that was the struggle taking place in pagan Rome, right? And we have also a struggle that was taking place at this time between Roman bishops and Arianism, which was the belief that was coming from the Eastern Europe, right? When they got the belief of the Hebrews, they developed on it. And you see, that's why you find that there's a lot of things that they put into that belief system. Some of the things they started to academize the scriptures. They started to add their own knowledges in the scriptures. Some of the scriptures that we later on get, which were translated by these same people, they added their own ways, thereby losing meaning of the intended original script through translation. So that was what was happening. The Gentiles had accepted the belief of the Hebrews, and they were growing in it, but there was a struggle because the Roman bishops also, during these years, were fighting against those who wanted to read the scriptures and the practice as they understood. So there was war between the free minds and those who wanted to control others. So, and those who have been eating his food shall destroy him, and his army be swept away, and many fall down slain. And both these sovereigns are to do evil and speak lies at the same table, but not prosper, for the end is still for an appointed time. Then he shall return to his land with much supplies, and his heart be against the set apart covenant. And he shall act and shall return to his land. At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. So that is what was taking place in the pagan Rome Empire. And because of many of these things that were happening, things like homosexuality, though also, we are told in history, were also rampant in the kingdom of Rome. And debauchery was the order of the day. Sexual immorality, and the kingdom had to split because it had become so weakened because of wickedness. Now, verse 30, then he says, for ships from Kittim shall come against him, and he shall lose heart, and shall return in rage against the set apart covenant, and shall act, and shall return and consider those who forsake the set apart covenant. So the ships, historically, one would want to notice the barbarian invasions, right, which actually ultimately caused the fall of pagan Rome. So when they come, they overran pagan Rome, and it was left divided into splinters, right? From verse 31, verse 31 says, and the strong ones shall arise from him, and profane the set apart place, the stronghold, and shall take away that which is continual, and set up the abomination that lays waste. So from verse 31 up to verse 36, this must refer to the reign that brought about the wounding of Papa Rome in 1798 by General Berthius' imprisoning of the Pope. Because verse 30 is talking about the fall of pagan Rome. So verse 31, it talks about the strong ones shall arise from him, that is from pagan Rome, right? Which is Papa Rome authority. And Papal Rome authority would profane the set-apart place. Because this Papal Rome is, unlike pagan Rome, is a religio political entity. It's a religio political power. So that's why it is, Daniel is referring to it as profaning the set-apart place. Right? It would stand in the place of Elohim and want to be Elohim and do things that are contrary and against Elohim. So scripture goes on to say, I will profane the set-apart place, the stronghold, and shall take away that which is continual, and set apart abominations that lays waste. Taking away that which is continual, according to the Besora, is removing the government. But the same verse 31, KJV says, and right, let's read 31 from the Besora again. And the strong ones shall arise from him, and profane the set-apart place, the stronghold, and shall take away that which is continual, and set up the abomination that lays waste. Right? So taking away that which is continual, as far as the Hebrew word is concerned, is not what KJV says. Because KJV says, and arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. So, for starters, the word sacrifice is italicized. It is not there in the original text, right? So this is a word that is added by the translators. And by them adding the word sacrifice, the meaning of the word daily becomes totally different from what it's supposed to mean from the Hebraic context and from the context of the passage, from the context of the book, from the context of the whole narrative itself. So when you say daily sacrifice, rather than just saying the daily or the continual, when you say the daily sacrifice, or we say continual sacrifice or continual sacrifice, the added word sacrifice changes the whole meaning of what the scriptures actually intend to put across. So what is the daily? The daily in Hebrew is tamid, right? From an unused root meaning to stretch. You get that? Properly continuance as indefinite extension. Right? That's what this word means, tamid. Constant. Right? Something that is regular, that continues, that is perpetual. So when you add the word sacrifice, then that means you are putting a sacrifice into the context. And it can sound to be almost correct. But when you remove the word sacrifice and just remain with the tamid, or just remain with the daily, or just remain with the continual, then it gives the meaning of stretching, or to continue, to perpetuity, or to continue for a long time, right? So that's what exactly this word tamid means. It's not talking about sacrifices. It's talking about a continued rule, a continual governance, a continual power, right? Because a continual kingdom. This narrative, Daniel chapter 2, 7, 8, and 11, is dealing with kingdoms, right? It's dealing with the rise and the fall of kingdoms. So a kingdom, as long as it rises, then it continues until it is removed. So the word daily does not mean sacrifice. The word daily is tamid, which means that which continues. That is the government. The word sacrifice is added, thereby losing meaning of the text, a case of meaning lost in translation. The daily that is taken away is the absorption of pagan Rome and exaltation of its paganism in the belief of Yahshua. This daily is not sacrifices as taught in Christianity. It is the governing power. It is it that continueth. Let's look at the word and see where it is used and see if the meaning can establish sacrifices. It is used in Daniel chapter 8. I've got a few texts here to read. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily was taken away. I will not use the word sacrifice there, although it is there in KJV. I will just omit it because it's not there from the original text. It is added by men. So me as a man also, I've got authority to remove it. If men added it, then I've got authority to remove it. If men added Lord God, I've got power to remove Lord God. If men added Jesus, I've got power to remove Jesus. So everything, anything that men added, as for me, I will not accommodate it in the scriptures of my Father. So verse 12, so it says, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Did you hear that? The daily is taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Power is taken away, and his place of sanctuary was also destroyed. Right? And a host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. This is a power that is able to cast down the truth by the edicts of pagan Rome, right? Truth was trampled on the feet, right? And a host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and it prospered. Then I heard one set apart one speaking, and another set apart one said unto that set apart one which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily? Right? The vision concerning the daily. Those that can interpret this scripture, the daily, or rather the days of the power of this power, they go further after the stake. And you cannot in your mind be thinking that this verse is saying the sacrifices will continue up to 1798, which is thousands of years after the stake. That doesn't make sense. But this daily is the one that is being spoken to in context, right? Which is the Roman power, right? Which was going to rule, which was going to have power and authority, which was going to trample upon the set apart ones up to the time when its authority and the power was removed from it. And that's when the Pope, the wound was inflicted. That's when the Pope was imprisoned by General Berthier in 1798. Like we said last time, that prophecy links up very well with history. And so we can never move away from the fact that this timeline also affects, right, the wounding of the Pope. It affects also the time by which investigative judgment is going to begin in the sanctuary in heaven. And that is supposed to begin much, much later after the stake, right? And so you can't say it is talking about sacrifices which would have continued up to that time. No, it's not. It's talking about the rulership. It's talking about the power, right? It says, then I heard the set apart one speaking. Okay, I've read that. How long shall the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the walls to be trodden underfoot? When he said unto me, unto 2,300 days of years, right? Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Right? And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, they stood before me as the appearance of a man. I don't think we need to read all that. But definitely, when you go to verse 19, it says, and he said, behold, I'll make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed, the end shall come. Did you hear that? It's talking about the coming of the coming of the end at an appointed time, right? Then it says, verse 20, the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now, that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the set apart people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without end. And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Do you hear that? The context of the discussion is not about sacrifice here, beloved. It's about the coming of kingdoms one after the other in a sequential order of continuity. So that's the word tamid means the continual. In this case, the continual kingdoms or government. So when the daily is taken away, then the government has been taken away. The government has been pushed out of power, right? That is the daily that is taken away. It's not the sacrifice. It's what you are taught in Christianity. You read in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. And from the time that the daily shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh the desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Now, when you consider Daniel chapter 12, right? Daniel chapter 12's times are literal. They are no longer symbolical, right? Given in a prophetic sense, symbolical. No. They are now in a prophetic sense, but literal, right? These are time prophecies that are given in a literal setting. And so therefore, when it says 1,260 days, it's exactly 1,290 days as it is given in the scripture. So you can't think that at the end of the time, at the last 3.5 years of the earth's history, there is still sacrifices carrying on. No, man. That's not it. But King James Version would read, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh the desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Right? Now, the context and the setting of this prophecy is right at the end of the time, during the last 3.5 or so years of the earth's history. And at that time, there's no more sacrifice. But KJV here, he says the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. Do you see that what many adds to the scriptures ends up building doctrines of devils? That's what happens. So are many things that you have believed. As Christians, your belief system is tainted with a lot of paganism. Right? So it's time that we start to study the scriptures in their own language. We've got tools that we can use to help us to get to the original meaning. And if we don't get to the original meaning, we'll always have erroneous understanding of the text. As in this case. Right. Where was I? Daniel chapter 11. I was dealing with verse 31. Right. It talks about the strong ones shall arise from him and profane the set apart place. So, from verse 31 to verse 36, we are going to be looking at the reign that brought about the wounding of the Papal Rome in 1798. I don't think we've got much time. I think we can carry on from that, right? We can carry on from that next time. And we look at the number 5 empire, looking at Papal supremacy number 1. So now what we have seen, essentially, the setting has been put in place. The foundation has been put in place. What I want us to take away from this discussion is that Daniel chapter 11, from its onset, is giving us wrangling and struggling between two kings. One king to the north, one king to the south. So it's an up and down fighting against each other. Right? When there was no one who could emerge victorious between the two, finally came up pagan Rome, right? Who overthrew Syria, who overthrew Palestine, who overthrew Mizraim. So these three lands, right, which were in line with each other, Yashra in the center, or Palestine in the center, right, and Syria to the north, Mizraim to the south. All these have been vanquished by Rome. That's what we have seen. And Rome has become the power that rules over all these. Now, pagan Rome gets to a place where it now becomes so powerful, but at the same time it's become so wicked, right? And it's practicing iniquity. And this kingdom is weakened by debauchery, by homosexuality. It's weakened by lasciviousness. The kingdom of Rome is weakened by idolatry. So all those things compounded together brought about the demise of pagan Rome by the barbarians who were coming from the north. So they came to pagan Rome, destroyed it, weakened it, and then from within pagan Rome arises the bishops of Rome, emerging as power brokers, emerging as powers themselves in that divided Rome. And next, we shall be looking at Papal Rome's emergency to the seat of authority and the power, and its influence to the then world, and how it affected the worship of Yahweh, how it influenced the worship of Yahweh, thereby creating a religion today that has filled up the whole earth, a religion called Christianity. And we will notice that within that time frame, right, this new religion called Christianity is actually coming up in the times of the Gentiles. Because when our forefathers were cast out of the land, and finally with the last ones that were cast out of the land after AD 70, the land was taken over by other people, right? And so the worship of Yahweh by his own people was now restricted in the places where they were hiding. And most of them, they came to Africa. Some were enslaved in Rome. Some were enslaved in Europe. So they were enslaved in many other places. And for them, worship was no longer as what it used to be. The ones who were carrying the torch at this particular time of worship were the Gentiles, but the worship was mad. The worship was not true worship. The worship was mixed with paganism, right? And so that type of worship, that type of experience is coming up in attempting to worship Yahweh, and it's being practiced by the Gentiles. The Gentiles have been given their own probation, just like we were given our own probation. When we were given our own probation, we could not live according to the word of Yahweh. and Yahuwah cast us out. And so he gave the Gentiles their probation. And their probation would be ending, or it has already ended. I'm not quite sure now, but it's ending anytime soon. As we get restored back to the vine, then also the time of the Gentiles will be coming to an end. So that's where we are right now. We are going to explore further this in the next presentation. But what I want you to take away with you is the wrangling between the king of the south and the king of the north. This war which is taking. So that is the platform upon which the prophecies of Daniel chapter 11 to Daniel chapter 12 will end. They are going to end being encapsulated right at the end of the time. May Abba Baraka you as we continue to study this prophecy. Once we can get this right, Daniel chapter 11, 40 to Daniel chapter 12, 4, or Daniel chapter 12, 13 will become easy for us to understand it. Allah, we are